it moderates development, so sometimes it's worth $100,000 to prevent people from putting 10 houses in, because the amount of services that are required will outpace the investment in like 1 year. So it's a good investment to assist with the Conservation Commission purchasing land. That's about all I got to say for now.
Notably, there's a diversity of funding mechanisms that come into this. It's not all town, may not be all town funds that help this. As I've walked the land, starting to feel like Davy Crockett as I've walked the land. And by the way, I'll note at about 4:47 this afternoon, there's a beautiful sunset off the top of that hill. Quite a view, both south and west, but a lot of the boundary to the property is SELT, S-E-L-T, and I don't know what that's an acronym.
Southeast Land Trust.
Very good, thank you. And I'm surprised, Mr. Tripp, because I know how much you despise acronyms.
No, I don't despise acronyms. I just hate not knowing what they are. That's kind of like at the school board meeting the other night. They kept talking about UA, and I didn't have a clue as to what UA is, but I found out it was a unified arts, which after that it made perfect sense. But,
well, thank you for that clarity anyways. But there's different diversities of funding mechanisms that come into this to make that acquisition. Mr. Burgess or Mr. Ver, you want to follow up?
I don't have anything further.
Very good.
Yeah. Other than the fact that the frontage is a little bit weak, but with the amount of land that there is and the way the house is proposed now, it would seem like it's a perfect spot.
We've heard a comment about diminution of value. And we see the applicant is offering on this proposed building lot some methods to try and create a buffer between what's proposed and the current occupant at 11-86. Anybody want to speak to this? Mr. Corbett, you got some thoughts on that?
I like your idea of extending the no-cut disturbance buffer. Where I'm wrestling in my mind is how to, the right way to kind of call that out, I guess. I'm at a complete loss of words for some reason, but I don't know how we dictate that properly. I do think that's a nice alternative. I'm a fan of putting the spruce trees in to match what's existing on both ends to help beef that up a bit. You still see, the existing maple, the ornamental tree, new maples going in. I think they're doing the best really that they can without just making it a house in the woods to make this work right now.
Isn't that proposed on the drawing itself, that there's a no-cut zone right along that back property line? It's designated right there.
Here, but not where
the other side?
Yeah, so...
But there's already bushes there. There's a spruce already there.
Right, and what
That's not being cut.
But what Mr. Perkins wanted to put in was to call it out as a no-cut zone.
Oh.
And that was what Mr. Miser had said they would be okay with having. To me, I just don't know how we would describe that. I'm not really good at the easterly, westerly portion of writing that out.
Well, on that regard, we can amend. We'll amend something that makes sure that this goes forward to planning. Historically, and we haven't had this in a long time, where the board can make recommendations, but we can also write in that the applicant has proposed this and that this is part of the application. So, Mr. Ver, you have any thoughts on diminution of value?
No.
No,
No?
see, I can't see where there'd be a diminution of value, honestly.
Okay.
Especially if the house it's a new house, so it would increase the value of others in the property, I thought. But that's just me. You know what I mean?
Let's go back to it, Mr. Perkins. Personally, I think if the driveway was located on the other side of the property, I would think,
Yeah.
that there would be something there. But I think even the location of the driveway, that would have been my concern, is really how it's affecting the property. And it seems like most of what's being done is really, I don't want to say as far away from Lot 86 as possible, because the house, you could argue, could go further back. But for what all intents and purposes, it looks like they're trying to keep as much of it away from the house as possible, which I can appreciate.
That's basically what I was thinking also. They've done a good job of trying to be good neighbors, I think, maybe is better words for it, but that's about what I'm saying. Where they put everything that could be problematic off the edge of the other property, which is theirs, they own already. So rather than put it over on the neighbor's property, going up that edge of the boundaries. So I think they're trying to do the best they can do.
All right. Mr. Tripp?
As to the, but
Yeah, so we're kind of questioning diminution of value. This is a heavy, it can become a heavy point as it's part of the 5 criteria and subject to disclosure under the finding of facts. So I'm trying to get a board consensus on it.
well, I don't see a diminution in value.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my feeling, and I haven't expressed my points of view on this, I found that the division of the property is unique.
Yeah.
Trying to get a house lot out of this sliver and subdividing it. It's kind of like half one, it's six of one, half dozen of the other. And not quite to the extreme of the, or it is more extreme than the relief sought across the road by the applicant. But in my argument on that, we came to the balance that it was under the road frontage required for the zone, but it had more acreage, and I almost feel that same way with this. It's an odd cut piece. Geographically, it's very sloped. It's going to be a tough piece of land to do anything with, and it's a total of about 8 acres there. Which is 2 acres more than needed to be for for the total. So there's my balance on that. I have a hard time with the diminution of value. I always am respectful in concerns. I have only once spoken to diminution of value on a parcel. But the situation in that case was where a new driveway was going to be put in 15 feet from a deck for somebody that had been known to be living there, for a house to be there for 30, 40 years, always under the aspect that nothing would be built behind them. But in this case, this is a rarity that I look at diminution of value, and I think there's enough buffer there that anybody that sees development behind their home may always be shocked. But sometimes that development is when the lot size is 1 acre and there's no separation or buffer between the homes, and this certainly provides that. So that's kind of my perspective on the diminution of value, and I haven't heard anybody speak opposite of that. I think I'm following the rest of the board on that note.
Yeah, to kind of add on to that, Mr. Chair, I'm not, and I mean no disrespect to the applicants, but you're not going to get an argument from me that's not a very strange cut. And that was the first thought I had when I looked at it. But the more as the discussions have gone, and now as you look at what's really, I don't want to say usable, but usable within Lot 1A, I look at the rest of that a triangle shape going up there as now just a buffer created for the other properties with what will now be, with the conservation land for whatever use ends up being there. And you can almost make the argument that by making such a strange cut, it is also providing a little bit more of a benefit. It's not really too much to the house owner per se, but to everyone else. Just food for thought, but it's kind of where I went with it after a while.
Yeah, I walked that wooded piece, and there are some old logging roads or service roads up around the property in multiple places. There's, I'm guessing it's an old Chevy truck out in the woods there, which I'm always fascinated to find. But I couldn't identify it for sure, but I know it had a Delco Remy distributor in it, which means it was a GM, and it didn't look like a car body, so that's my speculation. But understanding also that this property could be subjected to multiple houses up behind there, and though sloped development, I've been in Pelham and saw some creation of a development that looked like a slope that would only be fitting for mountain goats. But anything is possible. And I think the exchange of this is much lighter for the potential that the current owner could do with the land, and softer on the impact for the abutter. So that's kind of my view on it. Sorry to be so gabby on it and articulating.
Well, looks like a typical flag lot to me, where it provides access to the land behind it. And my only concern would be if what to happen, it usually happens with flag lots, is they ultimately subdivide it a little bit more, and I don't think that'll happen here.
That is
Well,
that is correct.
Well, part of the land, they'll peak the portion, is going to be no cut anyways. It's basically conservation land, that portion between the stone wall and the top of the property. So you're probably talking about 3 acres there that is usable, that they're going to get into, and the rest of it's going to be pretty much no use.
Yep.
Yep. One thing I was going to say when the other gentleman was up, the water tower, that's a town council issue, and eventually the town council will bring it up, and you'll have the right to go to the town council. The zoning board doesn't have anything to do with that normally. All right, so.
Mr. Mayor, just
it's a
deliberative
total-
session.
Huh?
Deliberative.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I'm making a comment about what I
That's it.
was going to say.
All right.
So that's it.
All right. Very good.
Short and sweet.
All right. Well, those conversations aside, let's structure the motion. Your typical subject to obtaining all state, town permits and inspections, and this parcel is subject to technical review committee and review and planning board approval as well. Are there any other conditions anybody would like to make? And noting Mr. Corbett's concern about how to deal with the proposed changes from Mr. Meisner. Other than, we can delve into that, but are there any more thoughts or conditions to this motion that anyone would like to see?
Not tonight. I got nothing.
All right. So to Mr. Corbett's concern about how to address the proposed changes, the condition 3 could be accepting the amended changes from the applicant. Mr. Mackey, how's it easiest for you to push that paperwork along?
Before it goes to the amendment, it wasn't what was on here, it was the additional space that you had brought up on top of kind of what he proposed.
No, I understand. Okay. We'll amend it, but how do you need that? You want us to give you?
Maybe just some language with regard to extending the 30-foot no-cut buffer along the property lines of lot 1186, which would bring it right around.
Sounds good to me.
if that's what the board's intention is.
Yes.
Do you have that, Mrs. Moran?
Started with
Okay, extend the no-cut buffer. That's a north-south boundary, am I correct?
Pretty much.
Yeah. No-cut buffer for the entire north-south boundary.
Need to specify of lot 1186, or is that implied?
Well, it's implied, but anything that's more specific is always good. So north-south boundary along lot 1186. Thank you. Okay.
Take the-
And condition number 4. To include other proposed plantings.
Two drawings presented.
to include
Yeah, do you wanna say-
proposed plan.
On
Plant
revision 1. that's
Plans.
proposed.
plantings, and what is that, Mr. Corbett?
I need to just say, basically include, or approved, I think we can just specify it even more so of approved, the approved, well, whatever, the plantings of revision 1 presented to the board on,
Do you see that as
Yeah.
noted as revision 1?
yeah, right here, for the ZBA meeting comments.
Okay. How did you put it, other proposed plantings?
Trying to think, as presented on revision 1 provided to the ZBA,
Include other proposed plantings,
on revision 1 of the provided drawings, dated 1/30/2023.
dated.
30/23.
Yes.
December 30th, isn't it?
Okay. All right. Anybody else? You all set, Mr. Tripp?
23, okay.
Very good. And folks to the right, you're all set?
All set. Got it.
Okay, very good. So I think we're all set with the motion, and we can come out of deliberation.
I'll make a motion to come out of deliberative session.
I'll second.
Mr. Burgess has the motion, Mr. Corbett has the second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you.
That's what I'm looking for.
I make a motion on case number 23-102, Kurt Meisner, Meisner Brem Corporation, owner Donald F. Ball, irrevocable trust, Douglas Ball trustee, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-48.b.2 and 3 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the property to be subdivided into 3 residential lots, with each lot having less than the required footage and lot width. Proposed frontages are 175 feet, 72.40 feet, and a 0 feet for a proposed 42-plus acre conservation lot, where 200 feet is required at 82 English Range Road, parcel ID 11087, zoned LDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 4. The first one is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. 2, subject to TRC review and planning board approval. 3, extend the no-cut buffer for the entire north-south boundary along Lot 11-86. And 4, to include other proposed plantings as revision 1 of the provided drawing dated 01-30-23. And that concludes the reading. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Burgess seconded the motion. That puts that on the floor for any considerations or changes. Anybody else?
Nope.
Seeing none. All in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Let me read for the finding of facts for case number 23-102. The applicants are requesting to subdivide a 51-acre parcel into 2 residential parcels and 42+ acres of conservation land. The zoning district is low-density residential. The requirements of the zoning district are 3 acres with 200 feet of frontage. The 2 residential lots will have 175 feet and 42.70 feet of frontage for the residential parcels. This development will require planning board approval. The board evaluated diminution of value, and the board concludes no diminution of value exists. And there is a no-cut disturbance line as amended from January 23rd or 30th, 2023. Anybody have any additions or changes to the findings of fact, or is that acceptable?
I think it's acceptable.
All right, hearing no other gestures, all in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And let's poll the board. Mr. Corbett
I vote yes.
and Mr. Ver,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
I vote yes.
Mr. Tripp,
Yes.
and the chair will make it unanimous by 5-0. So, Mr. Meiser, congratulations to yourself and your applicant. Of course, anybody aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for reconsiderations through rehearing. After that, recourse is to Superior Court.
Okay, thank you
Very
very
good.
much, folks.
Thank you for accommodating the abutters. You gotta take elocution.
Bob taking glamour shots of the truck while he's out there.
It's better than shooting yourself in the foot.
It passes.
Was his name Cheddar Bob?
Sir.
That's a 56 Chevy.
56.
Is it really?
Uncle drove it up there.
No kidding.
Before it was Vietnam.
Been there that long?
Yeah,
Is that the only vehicle there?
yes, that I know of.
And was,
Right up in the woods.
well, because you can see where some stuff's buried in the banking or whatever, right?
I have to tell you, six, yeah.
Was it a pickup or was it?
No, it was a 56 Chevy, cool,
Oh, cool.
two-door.
Yeah, so I saw the trunk,
Yeah.
I think, which made me wonder if there was a second vehicle there.
And it was used for a lot of target practice, you could see that.
Yeah, I could see that, yeah. Yeah, thanks for filling me in. So was it a silo up there?
No, that was also a well.
It was,
It
okay.
used to be pumped up from the brook down below.
Oh,
As long as I lived there, it was never used. My dad and I built a fort over it in the 60s.
yeah, okay.
That's what we played, that's what the building was over it.
How deep was it?
It's probably about 7 feet, because I used to jump down it and I could shimmy up the pole, so.
Yeah, okay. Well, when I hear you, we were playing on top of it, I'm wondering, well, that could be some excitement, right?
Yeah. The animals used to get stuck in it, so we used to have to put a board so that the raccoons and the skunks and stuff like that could climb out of the well.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh. Good to know. Thank you very much.
That was better than the case.
Well, that's like, I found a truck bed behind my house. Yeah, it's still there.
There's a bunch
that
of cars
happen at my
behind the
house.
woods in the house across the street from me, but they're all newer.
And Actually, the trailer park.
5 minutes if you want to.
Get rid of this. Yeah, we'll bring this back over to you.
And you have findings of fact somewhere,
I'll give them to you.
and I'll give them back too.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right, so next case up is Jeffrey Moulton, and he's representing the Merchant Family Holding Trust for Paul and Kathy Merchant trustees, and that is case number 23-104. Welcome, Mr. Moulton.
Good evening. Thank you.
And you, I'm sure, recall our protocols, so please proceed.
Very good. So the proposal is to add a 16 by 20-foot addition to an existing seasonal home, maintaining the same side setbacks as the existing structure of 14 feet and 16 feet. Excuse me. Seasonal camp will continue to use Germantown Road, which is a private road as access, which is not an approved public street. Number one, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the size of the proposed addition and setbacks are consistent with other homes in the area. Existing side setbacks of 14 feet and 16 feet will be maintained. Owner will provide a waiver for municipal liability for the private road. Number two, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because setbacks are consistent with other homes in the neighborhood. All neighborhood homes use Germantown Road for access. Municipal liability and responsibility for the private road will be waived. Number three, substantial justice is done because no other access is available, making the lot unusable otherwise. The existing house is only 720 square feet, constraining the use of the property by the family. Number four, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the lot size, proposed addition, and setbacks are consistent with other lots in the neighborhood. No other access is available, and impervious coverage will be reduced from 58.9% down to 45.5%. Number five, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. A, for purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. I, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. The narrow lot width and size of the lot, which is similar to other lots in the neighborhood, limits the owner's ability to meet zoning setbacks. Lot is unusable without private road access. Two, the proposed use is a reasonable one. The owner proposes to add an addition consistent with the character of the neighborhood. The pre-existing lot already has access to the private road consistent with other homes nearby.
Go ahead and elaborate in your own words, Mr. Moulton, if you choose.
Sure. So I can walk you through some of the documentation. If you took a quick look at the tax map, you can see lot 19089 is very similar in size to its neighbors. If you go past the deed, you'll see some pictures. First picture is looking from Germantown Road, where the addition will go on the back of the home. And then the second picture is the west side of the house. You can see a number of pavers there that will be removed, as well as in the front of the house. Picture three is the lake side of the house. Again, a lot of pavers there that will all be removed. And then picture four is the east side of the house. So the reduction in impervious coverage for the lot is achieved even though we're adding an addition on the back, is we're removing all the pavers in the front and on the sides of the lot. If we take a look at the drawing, it gives you a better idea. On the last sheet, you can see the existing house in black, with the red being the proposed addition of 16 by 20 feet. You can see that we're continuing to use the same setback, 14 feet on the top side and 16 feet on the bottom side. The distance from Germantown Road will be 51 feet, so that'll still be within it'll meet the 35-foot setback. So we're just asking for a variance for the 14 feet on the east side of the lot versus 15 feet, which is required in the zoning ordinance. And then, of course, the owner would provide a waiver for the town for the use of the private road for access.
This is currently just a seasonal home?
Yes, and it's going to remain as a seasonal home.
Okay. And again, the impervious surfaces are being reduced by removing pavers, therefore creating a balance on the actual structure of the roof area, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a shoreland permit that was also submitted, and that's pending. But part of the shoreland permit is looking for a reduction in impervious coverage, and that's how we're achieving it.
It used to be more stringent about a decade ago, as I recall.
The regulations are kind of funny. I mean, if you increase impervious coverage, then they have all kinds of things you're supposed to do to alleviate the situation. But if you actually reduce the impervious coverage, they're happy, and they don't put any other stipulations on you. But,
Okay. Any questions from anybody wish to open?
It's pretty,
So it shows that there's no house whatsoever on the house, on this lot?
Yeah,
There is a
It's a-
structure
it's a
there.
seasonal house.
Yeah,
Go
the
to your
front
last
porch.
page.
Yeah, but I was looking at earlier, yeah, I was looking earlier at, yeah. Yeah, where?
How many bedrooms is it now?
it's one bedroom, and
So it's increasing it too?
it'll go to 2 bedrooms.
Oh, yeah.
And there's already a compliant septic system size for 2 bedrooms.
I missed that page. Ah, all right,
Here it is.
there we are.
If you go all the way to the last page, there's a fold-out, Mr.
he got the full
I
out, he
see.
got
Okay.
the
Very good.
photos accompanying
Got
it.
it, yeah.
All right.
Now, does this have city water? Does this have city water?
Empty lot?
It has
City-
lake water.
It has
Yeah,
lake
I'm
water. I should have said municipal water.
No,
Yeah.
it does not. It has a well, and there's a well you can see close to the
Here it is in the
screen
front.
porch on the front,
Yep.
Oh,
the W.
Everybody else all set?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really much to add. It's pretty straightforward ask. It doesn't look like the space is there any other way to avoid the 15 feet setback.
Okay. So in that case, let's go right over to public. Anybody who wishes to speak on this behalf, I'm sorry, Mr. Mackey, anything you care to, I knew I was forgetting something.
I didn't have a lot to say.
Well, don't want to leave you out, so feel free.
As Mr. Tripp just asked, private well, private septic, we do have a 2-bedroom state-approved system on file that was installed a few years ago. Obviously, we'll need to follow FEMA regs for development within the floodplain. We'll need some elevation data on that. And shoreland permit is pending, so.
Yeah, for FEMA, because it's it's less than 50%, and the existing house can't be really raised, There isn't a requirement to do the,
So it's not considered a substantial improvement?
yeah, if you're over 50%, then FEMA would require you to put in flood vents or raise the foundation up for the entire structure. But this is less than 50%, so.
Okay, good enough.
And the sheds are already existing, so
Yeah.
we don't have to ask for a variance for that, right?
Right. Ms. Moore, you all set? Yeah, okay. All right, well, let's make a call to public. Anybody who wishes to speak on this matter in support, this would be your opportunity to come forward and say so. Likewise, we'll give opportunity to anybody who's out there remotely that wishes to speak on this. We have some phone numbers there. Mr. Preventer, you're going to post those for us? I see them, I'm sorry. And Mr. Corbett can narrate to the illustration.
Anybody at home who wishes to dial in, you can dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and then once in, press star 9 to raise your hand. If you're experiencing any issues, please dial 603-845-5585, and someone will be happy to help you.
Great, thank you. And I don't see anybody rising here.
So I have,
Let me hold you right there, Mr. Moulton. Anybody out there, Mr. Preventer?
Seeing none rise, Mr. Chair.
Very good. I think you have something to introduce, Mr.
yeah, I received a letter tonight from a neighbor, so if I can read it.
Sure.
It's from Philip and Andrea Messina at 20 Germantown Road, dated February 2nd, 2023, regarding 18 Germantown Road. Dear zoning board members, this letter is to let you know that we are in full support for the variance request. Our home is adjacent to this property, and we have no issues with the size and scope of the addition. We feel this will only improve the neighborhood. Sincerely, Philip and Andrea Messina.
All right, very good. Thank you. That being said, anybody out there in opposition to this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward. Also, the same extension for anyone who is remote that wishes to speak on this. That extension is granted to you as well. So anybody here wish to speak on this matter at all? Seeing no one rise, how are we doing out there in remote world, Mr. Preventer?
Mr. Chair, seeing none rise.
Very good. So we'll consider ourselves that we've met the statute for public input on this. And Mr. Moulton, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I do not.
Very good. Well, that being said, we can take a motion and go into deliberation.
So moved.
Motion.
Mr. Corbett has the motion. Who has a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Mrs. Moran has a second. On motions for deliberation, we'll have to stay to sitting members on the case. But I will remember you, Mr. Tripp, later on in the meeting when we need another motion. Mrs. Moran has the second. All in favor of going into deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, so we go right into deliberation here. We have subject to obtaining state and town permits and inspections and DES shoreline permit, as Mr. Moulton has suggested he would be required to do. And also we have the filing of the flood elevation certificate. I think Mr. Mackey has indicated as well. Are there any other conditions the board wish to set on this motion? Seeing no gestures there, in that case, we can come out of deliberation.
Make the motion to come out of deliberative session.
Second.
Mr. Burgess has the motion. Mr. Corbett has the second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 23-104, Jeffrey Moulton, owner, Merchant Family Holding Trust, Paul and Kathy Merchant, trustees, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-48.b.4 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a 16 by 20 addition to the existing seasonal home less than 15 feet from one of the side property lines at 18 Germantown Road, parcel ID 19089, zoned LDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 3. The first is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. 2, subject to obtaining New Hampshire DES state shoreland permit. 3, subject to filing flood elevation certificate to the Code Enforcement Office. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Mr. Ver has a second on the motion, puts that on the floor for consideration or any changes. Seeing no gestures there, all in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, before we go to a vote, let's review findings of fact for case number 23-104. This parcel is zoned in low-density residential area. The applicant wishes to add a 16 by 20-foot addition into the setbacks. The road for the residents is a private road. A state shoreline permit will be required if approved, and the residence already has a 2-bedroom septic home on it. Anybody have any additions or changes to the findings of fact? Seeing no gestures there, we'll call for a vote. Mrs. Moran,
I vote yes.
Mr. Ver,
I vote yes.
and Mr. Burgess,
How about yes?
and Mr. Corbett.
Also, yes.
And the chair will make that unanimous by 5-0, so congratulations to Mr. Moulton as applicant. You've prevailed in this matter, but anybody who's aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for review. After that, recourse would be to Superior Court. Next case is 23-105.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir?
can we take a break?
Can I ask if you could sit for an alternate? Sure. Okay, very good. Mr. Burgess will sit for an alternate and take a break. Mr. Dietzel, what do you say you sit on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. And we'll call the next case up as 23-105. Mr. Moulton, we don't see you very often, so welcome.
Thank you.
Sunday's back.
You want to tell them how to do it?
I think he's got it.
Very good. All right, the next, this proposal is to replace a 25-foot by 37-foot seasonal home with a new 24-foot by 38-foot home and deck, with the southeast side setback decreasing from 9 feet to 8.7 feet, and the northwest side setback increasing from 6.5 feet to 7.5 feet. Home will continue to use Whitney's Grove Road, which is a private road, as access, which is not an approved public street. Number 1, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because of the size of the proposed home and setbacks are consistent with other homes in the area. Minor side setback changes are proposed, less than 1 foot. Owner will provide a waiver for municipal liability for the private road. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because setbacks are consistent with other homes in the neighborhood and the existing house. All neighborhood homes use Whitney Grove's Road for access. Municipal liability and responsibility for the private road will be waived. Number 3, substantial justice is done because no other road access is available, making the lot unusable otherwise. Existing house is only 905 square feet, constraining use of the property by the family. Lake setback will increase. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the lot size, proposed addition, and setbacks are consistent with other lots in the neighborhood. No other access is available. Stormwater management will be added for the driveway and house. Number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. For purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. I, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. The narrow lot width and size of the lot, which is similar to other lots in the neighborhood, limits the owner's ability to meet zoning setbacks. Lot is unusable without private road access. Double I, the proposed use is a reasonable one. The owner proposes to build a home that is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. The pre-existing lot already has access to the private road consistent with other homes nearby.
And care to evaluate or elaborate a little more, Mr. Moulton, or are you all set?
Sure. If you look at the tax map, I think you'll see that the neighboring lots are consistent with other neighbors' lots, sizes, typical for this area of the lake. If we move on to the pictures, I'll qualify the pictures. They were pictures taken back in 2020 and 21, before the house was torn down and by the previous owner. So a little bit of history. The previous owner went and got a shoreline permit and went and got a septic permit, but he did not get the zoning variance. So when the property was purchased by the Sawyers, they wanted to add a deck to the front, and so they are in the process of refiling for the shoreland permit for that modification. It's kind of a minor modification, but it did trigger from the New Hampshire shoreland side that you've gone over the 30% impervious coverage. So that required then some solutions to be put in for the house and the driveway. So the house and the driveway will have a pervious pavement, and the reservoir underneath the pavement will be sized not only for the area of the driveway, but also for the house gutters to drain into it. So it'll serve a dual purpose. So there'll be no net rainwater going into the lake from any of the development. If we go on to the drawing, you can see in the black where the existing house went out quite close to the lake, and now it's being pushed back to about 21 feet from the lake. And then the new deck is shown going out another 12 feet from the front of the house. You see that we have a slight increase in setback for the south side of the house from 9 feet to 8.7 feet. And then on the north side, on the top side, we're increasing the setback from 6.5 from the existing house to 7.5. The setback from the edge of the lot to the front of the house will be 42 feet. And then the driveway there that is shown will be a permeable driveway designed per the New Hampshire DES specifications, and will also tie in the gutters and drain downspouts from the house.
Is the intent of impervious surface to retain water, or is it to absorb water?
Pervious? Pervious?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry.
Is to allow it to drain in. So what happens with the pervious pavement is that there's small holes between the pavement that allows the water to go in down below. It'll go through a couple layers of filtering, and then there's a reservoir down below. I believe this one was sized at 14 or 15 inches.
Okay.
Where the water would be retained and then filter into the ground.
Okay, well, good to know. Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Dietzel, you have any questions? Mr. Tripp, sorry. Left.
You have, on the drawing, you have a blue, I won't say rectangular, it's a rhombic drawing.
We have approved.
On the drawing, you have a shape that's in blue, outlined in blue. Is that the wastewater reservoir?
The blue is actually the setbacks for the town. That's, if we follow the letter of the law for the zoning requirements, the 15 feet setbacks, that little blue box is where the house would have to go.
That's interesting.
Oh, lovely.
Just about the size for a two-person tent. Yeah. Mr. Dietzel, you have anything there?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now down to my right, Mr. Ver.
No, I'm set.
Okay, Mr. Corbett, you all set?
One question, Mr. Moulton. So the pictures that we're looking at of the house, you mentioned was torn down by the previous owner. Do you know if the intent for the new house is a similar design, 2 stories, give or take for this, just a little bit smaller?
It was the same size, the shoreland permit. It's just that he had to go back because he wanted to add the front deck to it, which is allowed. You're allowed to go out 12 feet with a deck in front of the house. It's just that counts as impervious, so you have to then, they've triggered some extra work.
Fine. Good. Thank you.
It is a 2-story that you're proposing?
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Moore, you all set?
I am, thank
Okay.
you.
Very good. Mr. Mackey, you care to give us your input?
Yeah, I would only add, I mean, as was already brought out, Whitney's Grove Road, again, is a private road. So with a brand-new knockdown rebuild, we would want to see the liability waiver recorded. I think we did put that down as one of the conditions. Beyond that, again, built to FEMA specs, depending on the level of the floodplain. Mr. Moulton is well aware of that. Septic system is going to be designed, I would assume, for the number of bedroom home that's going to be proposed. And that's it.
They already have the septic permit.
I guess they already have that, so.
Noted on the drawings, it's a 3-bedroom.
Do you have mine like that? No.
Finding fact, you threw them all to me. You need them?
Well, I have what? No, I have my finding of fact. I can't find my motion sheet.
Oh, I have that too. If you need one.
I mean, I don't know how I'm supposed to remember anybody's name without the leader.
It's never stopped you. Never stopped you before.
Yeah, but that's for the last case.
Do you want mine?
Here.
This is, no, I'm fine, Mr. Tripp. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Well, I understand, huh?
Stop for any people to speak?
All right. Okay. Sorry for the loss there. So we've heard from Mr. Mackey.
Yep, we've not heard from the
The
public.
only thing that I would add, and I think that was already brought out, is that the existing home is gone. I did take some pictures. I had a heck of a time trying to find it because it was nothing
Looking for
but
something
an
that's not
empty
there.
lot. But there is a picture of basically a hole in the ground, so.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So if nobody has anything, we'll call public. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward. Likewise, we have phone numbers for anybody remote that would like to come in. How many people we have out there, Mr. Provencher?
Currently, we had a bunch drop off, so we're just a small handful right now.
Okay, very good. So a reminder, if you want to get into the meeting, just press *9. Mr. Corbett, you want to help out there?
Yep, prior to pressing *9, you'll need to dial 646-558-8656. And your meeting ID is 323-909-140. If you're having any technical issues, you'll dial 603-845-5585.
Very good. So, Mr. Moulton, while we call the public, why don't we have you take a step back there and yield to that dais for anybody who's coming up.
I have a letter of support
Is that-
Sure. Go ahead. I think we have it on record, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, and if you'd like, Mr. Moulton.
This is from Michelle and Frank Tambone, 934 Whitney's Grove Road. Zoning, dated January 25th, 2023. Zoning board members, please accept this letter as full support for the variance request. Our home is directly next to this property. We've had the opportunity to review the proposed construction drawings along with walking the site to personally inspect the setback locations. We have absolutely no issues with any of this and feel that Sawyer's intent will be a great improvement to our neighborhood. Please note our home also sits on a similar lot and was previously approved for a setback variance. We look forward to your approval and construction commencing soon. Sincerely, Frank and Michelle Tambone.
All right, very good. Thank you. So we'll yield back so we can have someone come up. Have you take a seat over there so someone can come up and speak. Okay, very good. Come right up.
Nancy Wall, my husband and I own the other side,
Okay.
and we've gotten no information on any of the drawings that you all have seen tonight.
So
I was expecting to
you're in
see them.
support of this?
I'm either way. I don't know at the moment
I see, okay.
because I haven't seen anything. In
Can you get a
general-
little closer to the microphone, please?
Absolutely. We don't know whether we're in support or not. In general, I'd love to see something built there, but we haven't seen any of the documentation at all.
So did you see any of the presentation as Mr.
It
Moulton?
wasn't there,
I see,
It
okay.
was just us.
which is why we came to see.
I see, okay, very good.
Name for the record?
This is Nancy Wall.
Address and name for the record?
I thought we did get that.
No.
She said she lived across the street.
I did say my name was Nancy Wall.
Yeah, no,
all right.
I think I recall you
I
weren't,
don't actually live there. I own the property on the other side of this house, yes.
you weren't quite seated at the mic when you had. I
I've
think.
never had anybody tell me I couldn't speak loud enough. So.
So you got
Yeah. So,
No.
Again, I'm not saying I'm opposed. I'm saying I'm uninformed,
Okay.
and I'm a butter.
so what is it that you're unclear about?
We have not seen the plot plan, the site plan, where the lines are, where it's going to sit on the lot.
Okay,
We do own that private road, some of that private road. I'm not saying that he doesn't have access to it. He certainly has a variance to it. But I'd like to understand what we're talking about.
all right, very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you step back for a minute, and I'm going to let Mr. Moulton explain to you what he has for a drawing. And we'll go on with the rest of our protocols. If we can have Mr. Moulton take about 2 minutes there, and then we'll give you an opportunity to speak back to any questions that you may have had, okay? So that being the case, is there anybody else that wishes to speak in favor of this application? This would be your opportunity to come forward.
None rising online, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you.
Took an Irish exit to the next level.
Yeah.
In the meantime, anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this would be your opportunity to come forward. And that applies to anyone who might be remote.
Seeing none rise, Mr. Chair.
Very good, and no one here is in objection to this at this point?
Do we want to let Mr. Tripp start singing for the folks at home, like hold music? Or-
Mr. Chair.
Well, I thought that we'd have him dance and Mr. Burgess could sing to it and clap his hands, but
Okay,
Get the
sure.
zoning board lights and pyros ready for us.
Do we have an approved song list?
Yeah.
No, we don't want to offend anyone.
All right. So we're in a very interesting spot here because we're in a delay, and
Maybe it's 12.
Mr. Preventure, can we go back to a posted recess for the public so that we're not just sitting here looking at ourselves?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. We'll bring that up presently.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Burgess, did you want to use the restroom?
Already did that. Thank you very much. I missed.
Good, thank you. Come on up, folks.
Here we go.
Just want to hear your words on it, if you're all set or not, and
Charles Wall, 909 Whitney's Grove. So we were not philosophically opposed to this. We had a lack of clarity about what the actual plan was. We have seen the plan, we've seen the site plan and the general idea of what's going there, and we are in support of it at this point.
okay, better than the hole in the ground that's there now?
We like the hole in the ground too. It improves our view, but that's all right.
Great, great
Very
neighborhood.
much, all right.
Do you want a bush or something put in, too?
Mr. Moulton, why don't you come back up? And You're welcome to rebut anything that's been said or make clarity either way.
I'm good.
Okay. Good enough. Kind of lost my way here, but we did hear from Mr. Mackey already, correct?
Have heard from the public.
We did.
Favor and opposed. We asked the phone
I want a
lines.
deliberative.
Very good. So no one else is out there, Mr. Preventure, am I correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. So if there's no other questions for the applicant, we can make that motion for deliberation.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Corbett has the motion for deliberation. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Mr. Dietzel has the second. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dietzel. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we have, the improvement seems like clearly an improvement of the property, especially from its current state, as Mr. Mackey has relayed to the board. And obviously by the engineering drawings, the footprint of available workspace or buildable space per the current zoning ordinances leave the property very restricted and almost in a hardship fashion. So those are my thoughts on this matter outside of the actual structure of the motion. Anybody is happy to, is willing to chime in if you'd like.
I agree, Mr. Chair. I think in the current state of the parcel, it's borderline unusable. Without the requirements of a setback, I think the inclusion of showing what could fit within the setback radius there, not to require a variance, is telling. And I think coming in and, looking to shave down, was it 3/10 of a foot on one side and increase the other by a foot for their setback, it's really the best you can do to not really mess with what was there previously.
Very good. Mr. Ver, any thoughts?
No, the same, I agree with my neighbor here.
Okay, very good. Mr. Ver agrees with Mr. Corbett. Mr. Dietzel?
I too agree that the 5 criteria have been met, and I agree with Mr. Corbett. And I believe that ultimately the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. In fact, might be enhanced, because to have a nice new home as opposed to a whole would be a more appealing neighbor. And I do think that there would be a hardship if we were to deny the variance, because otherwise the parcel is pretty much useless. So I think the 5 criteria are met. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Mrs. Moran?
I agree with everything that has been stated already. I do like the prepared plans when it shows what can be there without a variance, because I'm a visual person and it puts things in perspective. So other than that, I definitely think it's the best option.
All right, great, thank you. So other than that, we have our motion, as usual, pertaining to permits and inspections. As Mr. Moulton has indicated or implied, a flood elevation certificate would be necessary, as well as a waiver of municipal liability and responsibility must be recorded with the deed. Septic permit has also already been approved. So unless there's any other conditions to this motion, we can take a motion to come out of deliberation.
I'll make that motion.
Very good. Mrs. Moran makes a motion, come out of deliberation. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Mr. Ver seconds. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 23-105, Jeffrey Moulton, owner William and Lisa Sawyer, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-48.b.4 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to replace a 25 by 37 seasonal home with a new 24 by 38 home and deck, which will be located less than 15 feet from the side property lines at 936 Whitney's Grove Road, parcel ID 16009, zoned LDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have 3. The first is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. 2, subject to filing flood elevation certificate to the Code Enforcement Office. And the third is waiver of municipal liability and responsibility must be recorded with the deed. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Very good. Mr. Vera seconds that, puts it on the floor. Any last changes or considerations from the panel? Seeing no gestures there. Before we move this for a vote, let me just read findings of fact for case number 23-105. This parcel is zoned in low-density residential area. The applicant wishes to rebuild or replace an existing structure with a new home. The parcel is on a private road, and relief is for the side setbacks for this application. The new home will be a 3-bedroom house, and the home will require a shoreline permit, septic permit, flood elevation certificate, and waiver of municipal liability. Anybody have any additional changes to the finding of facts? Hearing no gestures, all in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's see, Mr. Dietzel.
Yes.
Mr. Corbett.
Yes.
Mr. Ver.
Yes.
And Mrs.
Warren.
Moran, sorry.
Yes.
I didn't see you on the slip here. Rick. Without the paper, I can't remember whose name is what. So the chair, his by the name is Perkins, he votes yes as well, making that a unanimous 5-0. So congratulations, Mr. Moulton, to you and your applicant. And of course, again, recourse, anybody aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask for a rehearing, otherwise recourse would go to Superior Court.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank God I remembered my own name.
I wouldn't have thrown anything out there.
He knows I'm going to help with it.
And that
I
last
liked it better
guy-
when we had Mrs. Evans and Evan. And never remember what was the first name and what was the last.
Mr. Evans.
How many times you have been married? Different people.
So he's a part-time chairperson and part-time matchmaker. Just look at him.
All right. Next up, we have the David and Emily Ferrin.
Got a full house for him.
That's it.
But
And this is case number 23-106. Mr. Ferrin presenting, I presume?
Yes, good evening. Dave Farron at 10 Hillwood Road.
So we have you, just as in case you're not a trained professional at this, we just ask for you to read your application into the record to start, and then we'll let you answer in your own words, and we'll barrage you with questions afterwards.
Very well, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Today's application for variance request is a proposal for a 30 by 34 garage along with a 14 by 12 breezeway, a living space above the garage, and a screen room behind. We're requesting a variance to the setback on the western border from the 15 feet we would need to get into the 5-foot space there. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest because this addition would be consistent with the other neighborhood properties, resulting in an increased property value. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the proposed use would be an allowed use. And I added in here, the setbacks are also consistent with the other homes in the nearby area. Substantial justice is done because it allows us to use that property to its greatest potential. The values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because this addition would then match the aesthetics as well of the other neighborhood properties. Little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship For the purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. There is no sufficient space. There's not sufficient space to locate this addition within the setback limits, and placement anywhere else would end up denying us the best use. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The addition matches the aesthetics, the size, and the scale of the surrounding properties in the neighborhood.
Okay, so feel free to enlighten us on what you're doing here.
Absolutely. In the spirit of matching the rest of the neighborhood and the houses around us, we're looking to add in some living space to help with the growing family, so adding the garage. The living space above gives us potential for, down the road, potentially an in-law place for my parents that are growing older, as well as we have in-laws out of state that come for longer periods of time. So we were looking to use that space to help us just better live where we are. The breezeway would act as a bit of a main artery, allowing access to the different spaces. And so altogether, we took that to our architect, and I think in the packet there we have some pictures of the proposed addition. That's what it was. To help visualize how it would sit, as well as the lot map, which would outline where the garage would be situated on the lot.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Farron, the breezeway, it's just going to be utilizing is that currently a three-season porch?
Yeah, correct. It's a screen porch right now.
Okay. And then the access to the garage, more so for me, the second floor, is that going to be accessible through the breezeway or just from stairs inside the garage?
It'll be from the breezeway.
Okay.
Yeah, not connected. The second floor won't connect to the main house, so the only entrance would be through that breezeway.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So not that it's a matter for this board to review at this time. Are you familiar with ADUs?
No, I'm sorry.
All right, so and where I'm going to go with this is that you're looking at this as a future potential in-law.
Yes.
Which essentially are more categorized as ADUs, accessory dwelling units now, no longer actually in-laws.
Sure.
And you would need acceptance for that down the line, separate from this.
Yes, when I had the survey done by Promised Land, we talked about the septic and that design, and we knew it was far enough down the road where it's not really on a 5 or 10-year plan at this point. It's just something we hold in our back pocket as a way to utilize that space if the need comes in the future.
Mr. Mackey, just briefly, if you can refresh us on the rules of ADUs in town here.
The big ones to remember, as was just mentioned, typically we require a new septic design that would include the ADU. When you're dealing with septics, it's a little more involved with an ADU because they figure you have another kitchen sink, another laundry. So it's more than just the bedroom calc. It's a little bit higher lot loading. So there's the updated septic. There's a maximum of 800 square feet of living space, maximum of 2 bedrooms, and it must be attached to the main dwelling. Those are the big ones.
Is the second floor and then access down through the breezeway, does that qualify as that?
As attached, yeah.
Attached, okay, very good. So just so you know, there's these guidelines that you're going to want to follow, and the 800 is maximum, correct?
Maximum living space, yeah.
And so it's going to take us to the question of the size of the garage that you're asking for relief on. You've identified that this fits the rest of the neighborhood. If you care to elaborate on that a bit?
34 by 1. Sure, I guess as I look at the neighbors both on my side and across the road, I would say it fits in the fact that there's a attached breezeway to a 2-car garage, most often with a space above as well. So that was the intent in this design, was to try to copy or match. The size is a little larger to accommodate both storage of, possessions as well as the space required for the stairways and potentially just other access to the main floor.
Okay. Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, the problem I have with dimensions here, they're saying, 6 inches left over? It looks like there's only 2, as far as I can tell. If you take the 34 and the 12, that's 46, and I only see the biggest part here is 48, so that'd be 2 feet 2 inches.
Oh, on the lot map there, the 48 and 2 is, that is being brought all the way over to the house again. So that's not the dimension of the new building. I penned in the new building, but that dimension.
No, see, there's 48 to the edge of the house, isn't it? Or is it to the breezeway? The arrow, I think, looks like it goes to the house.
Mr. Burgess, do you have your microphone on?
I think I do.
Okay. Yes?
I'm speaking down, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Let me move over a little better. But it looks like the arrow for this is touching the house, and the boundary line says 48.2.
48.2, and the breezeway would be 12 wide, and then the garage would be 30 wide for 42.
Yeah, but the arrow is touching the house.
Correct.
It's not touching the breezeway. It would be 12 feet long. Okay, I'm going from the outside, from there to there, okay? Yeah, but if this is 12,
Yes.
and you add 34 to 12,
It's 30 in the width. I might have wrote it backwards. The 34 is the depth.
okay, so it's 30.
30 by 12 would add on to the house
Yep.
to bring it to the 42.
That would be correct.
42 is 5.
42.
Okay. All right, with that.
So you're just clarifying math, Mr.
Yeah, I'm
Burgess?
wondering where things are coming from, that's all.
Okay.
The other thing would be, why do you need a 34-foot wide room? Why not like size of a normal two-story, would be like 24 feet?
That's correct, yeah, 24 by 24, I think, is standard. We added 6 feet to accommodate the stairwell up to the room, so it didn't come in and the garage unusable for 2 vehicles. And then there's also the storage of a motorcycle that we needed space for.
It is rather large. Mr. Burgess's question is where I was going. I'm trying to follow your scheme. My print isn't super bold, so it is kind of hard to see, but
Come on.
I see 2 stairways in this. Looks like there's one forward in the garage and then another one back that does a 90-degree turn.
Yes, the forward one would go into the breezeway from the garage,
Okay.
and then the one in the rear would go from the breezeway up into the second level.
I see.
Get out of here. Oops, wrong. Here.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes,
ask a
Mr.
question?
Clerk. Yep.
So you said this is similar to other homes in the area. So other homes in the area are up against the lot line?
Our direct neighbor that this would encroach upon is actually about similar in their setback, because we had a few conversations over the last year about how the owners of my house had signed to allow for their variance, and that they were excited to see us do a similar thing and help their house value. So yes, I would say that one is.
So your neighbor's house is only like 5 feet off the lot line too?
It is more forward, but yes, correct. It's very close to the line as well.
Mr. Burr, anything?
Well, I would like to know how far from the side property line you propose this garage to be. It says less than 15 feet. How much less than
We're asking for 5 feet. I think
5 feet?
technically it would come to 5.5 feet, I think, based on these plans, but
They're looking for 5 feet or 5.5 feet from the side property line at 10 Elwood.
It's still
yes.
Okay.
44.
Mr. Tripp again?
So the setback is 15 feet, and you're asking for a relief of 10 feet?
Yes, sir.
Less than.
So that you would only be like 5 feet off the lot line?
Yes, sir.
How far away are you on the property line to the left of the house?
Oh, that's only 40.
Do you have an
49?
approximate there?
It's on the map, on the drawing.
40,
40 feet on that side.
40.9.
Yeah.
And propane's on the other side too.
And propane in the septic is in the front on that side as well.
I
And
see.
then well is in the back middle.
That's correct.
The driveway's on the right side as well.
Yes.
Okay.
The shed's within the setbacks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. Tripp?
So if this variance is permitted, there would be like 10 feet between you and your neighbor's house?
If they were both at the same, it's more forward, but technically speaking, if the buildings were at the same distance off the road, there would be about 10 feet or so between the two. Since the other house is forward, more forward, it is woods and then his yard.
Oh,
Yeah, that'll show.
all right, thank you.
Yes.
And you are keeping the breezeway as it sits, am I correct?
Right now, it's on sonotubes. We would put it on, I believe, frost walls as we attach it. So we would improve that construction to be more permanent.
So you're going to tear that down and rebuild?
Yes.
Is the breezeway level with the floors in the house?
It would be a step down. It would not be the same level.
So currently it's a step down?
The screen room, it is, yeah. We exit a slider door down a step into the floor of the screen room.
Okay. My concern kind of is really with, it goes back to what I said earlier, concurring with Mr. Burgess about the width of the garage. I think historically, the board doesn't like to deprive one of a garage, particularly if it's a common theme in a community or a neighborhood. But the width of this starts to, when you're asking for the relief, and you see that excess, that starts to be a concern. The breezeway, my presumption was that the breezeway was staying intact, but in understanding your width for this is because you do have to, you're indicating that you need to put the stairs in the garage in order to get into an existing structure, but you're going to pull that structure down. It would seem to me that this breezeway is 14 by 12?
Correct. 14 would be front to back. The 12 is the left to right.
Yeah. And then in the width of this, that's what I've also been looking for, because I can't see the actual width versus
30?
the dimensions. Is the width 34?
No, the width is 30.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have a picture of the breezeway currently.
Yeah, I have seen it. I did the drive-by, but,
Yeah, but
yeah, and I see that too. I just wasn't sure on the dimension. So anyway, that's where I'm wrestling with, and the issue that you're taking the breezeway down to put it on a permanent foundation. I'm just wondering if there's other accommodations that can be that can happen here. A little concerned that you're getting 5 feet to the boundary. You know, if it were a 2 or 3 foot kind of thing, I tend to see that a little easier, but 5 foot seems a little close on such an excessive structure. But you have indicated you've had Promised Land has done the survey for you already?
Yes, sir, in January of '22.
Okay, very good. All right, well, let me rest there. Anybody else have any follow-up?
If I could add, just as well as part of the design was to match up to where the driveway ends. And so that garage would go right to the width of our driveway as well.
I see. So your driveway is currently at that width?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir, Mr. Tripp?
possibly, could we get Mr. Preventure to do a Google map so we can see what this looks like?
You can do that, Mr. Preventure?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
All right.
What
There it
I was
goes.
doing.
Let's see.
There's a carport back there.
Good request.
Mr. Dietzel, you have anything?
No, thank you,
No? Okay.
Would any of the trees being cut down here, or are we still going to leave those with this addition?
I took a long, hard look at them, and my conclusion at this point is I think I can leave them. They don't seem to interfere with the construction.
Thank you.
The Cuthberts that signed the letter
Yes.
authorizing, or not authorizing, approving your addition, they're on the other side of the house,
That's correct.
not on the driveway side.
They're on the driveway side.
They're on the driveway side?
Yes, sir, they would be on the side most impacted by the addition.
Why don't I get a picture of the house?
This was in the case files.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Preventure.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair.
Where am I? Oh, there we are.
Well, it does seem, as your depiction is accurate, that the garage on the Butters lot is staggered ahead of yours, closer to the street. And you have to imagine somewhere in there that there's a invisible property boundary. And there is it does appear the garage is close to the property line. I don't actually need rods and chains to tell me that. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to ask?
Do many trees have to come down on that side of the house?
At this point, we wouldn't be taking any of the trees down.
Those are already there and they're covering the driveway as is.
Can we get a street view?
Sorry, say again? Street
Get a
view?
street view?
It'll be far from the road, but we'll put it there, sure.
And where is your septic on the property? Is it forward of the house?
It is in the front yard there,
In the grassy
that grassy area. Yeah, that's not shaded.
Yeah, nothing's designated.
I don't believe street view is available on this road, Mr. Chair. It appears that way.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate the effort.
Oh,
As I'm sure
It
Mr.
is,
Tripp
it is
does.
just delayed. Here we go. So let's see, I think we're going to be... Okay, is this the next property here? Is that it?
I think
That's number 3.
that is it, but that is a very old picture before we moved there.
Okay,
Yeah, it's 2012.
There's 10.
all right.
And that's our
Mr.
neighbor.
Chair, these photos are from 2012, should be noted.
All right. But I also note to that the breezeway on this, the connection is much narrower on this other home than yours is currently. than the one you're proposing.
Is that it?
The other house is a raised ranch. I think it's longer, too.
Don't have my scale.
That's number 3, Elwood.
No, I think
No, this is,
I think that's wrong. I mean, it's saying 3.
That's not always
saying
accurate,
3 is
Mr.
I
Schultz.
see.
It's saying 3 is still
Oh, yeah,
allowed,
yeah,
but
okay.
this is just a photo from 11 years ago, so it just looks off from what
Our
staff photos look like
Our
this time.
numbering scheme is also very weird. The numbers don't go in order on the road.
Yeah, and I
It's weird.
it took me a minute today to realize all the mailbox were on one side of the street, so. But what I did notice is that the neighbor's breezeway connection is certainly not 12 foot wide. And it takes us to whether or not there's excess. It's the, it's the garage to get access to the breezeway. So the garage is excessively wide in my view, or the breezeway is excessively wide. And where your comparisons are to the abutter, I understand that his proximity to the lot line may be similar to what you're proposing, but on the merits of just this application alone in comparison to the neighbor, there's not the continual growth of a footprint. It's retracting the footprint. Understandably that you're using a covered transition to go from the house into the garage. I understand that. It's just that one of the two is seemingly excessive for the relief that you're looking for. That's my view on it at this point. Some of the other members may have a different view, but at any rate, anybody can speak to this at this point if they'd like.
So the one question I'd have to that point would just be, is the breezeway going to be utilized just to go from the house to the garage? Or are you still continuing to use it as, the screened-in 3-season room?
The breezeway is interesting. The more we use the word, the more it paints a different picture in my head. To us, it's an extension of the kitchen and the living space as a backdrop, as an entry point, as a movement into the screen porch that's going behind or the room above. So it will be finished and it will have a wide, like the slider door will come out and it will have a main flow as part of the kitchen itself. It wouldn't be like a separate room that's, a 3-season or something like that.
Okay. Anybody else have any follow-up for Mr. Farron?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Mackey, anything you want to add for us?
No, it was talked about a survey that the applicant had done, which is this document right here, which has got Promised Land seal on it, and what the applicant kind of used as a template for what he wants to do. And just in looking at that, where the driveway is at the closest point to the lot line, 47.7. So then if you add the 12 and you add the 30 together and do the math, it comes out to like 5.7, as far, give or take, as far as the actual setback, so.
So if we could get another 6 feet or so, would be in the 11-point range. What we get, what is it? 30, 24, yeah. It'd be
All right, so that wraps it up for you, Mr. Mackey?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Obviously, if we're to be approved, he would need to get permits through our office, but.
All right, very good.
I have a question for Mr.
Mr.
Mackey.
Tripp?
Is the other house really that close to the lot line?
That I would have to pull the building file and see. I do have a vague recollection of them built. I believe that was built as an ADU too. I think that was the Cuthberts, but I'd have to go pull the file to see if there was a variance granted for that. I'm not recalling.
I believe there was.
It was? And Jenny seems to recall that they received a variance. But, I mean, I can go run down and grab the file if it's important, but.
Let's weigh it out and see how it happens here. Noticeably though, with the driveway, there's room to access the back of the property. There's space there. again, I'm wrestling with the size of the breezeway, understanding, Mr. Farron, your point that this becomes part of, kind of an accessory to your kitchen. It's just the excess of the two components, the garage width and the breezeway together seems excessive versus the greatest potential return versus what's a reasonable return. So I'll digress on that for right now. We've heard from staff at this point. If no one else has any questions, let's make the call to public. Anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this application, this is your opportunity to say so. The phone number is posted. Apply to the remote public that has the same rights as anyone who may be here in person. Mr. Corbett, you want to read those numbers?
Yes, anybody at home who wishes to dial in, please dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140. Press star 9 to raise your hand, and everyone with technical difficulties, please dial 603-845-5585.
Very good, thank you. Anybody out there, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anybody online at all?
Seeing none.
Okay, good enough. So let's jump over. We'll make a call to anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this application. This would be your opportunity to say so. And seeing no one rise here in the audience and noting that there's no one else online remotely, we will consider ourselves as meeting statutes for the opportunity for the abutters. That being said, if there's... Yes, sir, Mr. Barron.
Just because those before me did it, is it worth acknowledging here that we do have that letter from the Cuthberts in the packet?
That's fine.
In support, yeah.
And you've acknowledged it. I think the board does have it on,
Okay.
we have it on record, that the Cuthberts, who are to your right, do not have opposition to this. And it seems like I was on the board early when they were here before. I know there's been a few different houses in this neighborhood, so I'm presuming could have been the Cuthberts, but maybe not, that asked for a variance. But it seems to me that I recall a few houses in around that bend near you.
They provided actually all of their documentation for their variance to help me with mine.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Do you have it with you now?
I took it out of the folder on my way here.
That's all right. It's okay. I mean, it's you again, going back, you see their house where it's positioned. You see that there's an interconnection because of elevations trying to get from one spot to another. But the width of it becomes really the question: can we shrink up some of the area on the side setback and still accommodate what you're looking to accomplish? And that's one of the questions that's in my mind. Does anybody else have anything? All right.
Now, that's my problem also. Something needs to be cut back, I think. But don't know what. Could take the stairs out of the garage and, then move the garage 6 feet or cut the breezeway in half. But, I don't know.
Well, if the breezeway were cut down by 4 feet, that leaves you an 8-foot wide breezeway, leaves you the 30-foot wide garage, and it leaves you access for
10 feet, 9
anything
feet.
to get out back and clearer opportunity on the side setback. Is that something you could live with?
I would say it would be ideal, but I think that I would take whatever I can get. In terms of, you mentioned getting to the back. That was part of the design with that rear garage door as well. So we maintain that flow.
Oh, yeah, there's a garage door in the
Yeah,
back.
two considerations there, not just getting around the garage with a vehicle or service equipment, but also the encroachment.
Yes.
Keeping off that boundary a little bit.
We would have to add that into the motion because all it says is less than 15 feet from the side property line.
And being
Change
I guess the question I would have for this, being the applicants, is both Mr. and Mrs. Ferrin, is this something that we would possibly want to table to see if this would work for both applicants, or do we think, we want to see if Mr. Ferrin is confident making that decision on his own without checking? I know how I might be treated if I came home.
Why did you take from your garage?
Speaking by a man who's married.
The breezeway,
Could you amend, are you comfortable amending this if the board so chose to shrink that breezeway down? Get you 9 feet off the boundary instead of the 5?
I would make that work, yeah. She said the most important part to her is the screen porch in the back, so I'm allowed to adjust the breezeway, I suppose.
Mr. Chairman?
Or if we,
Sir, Mr. Burgess.
Okay. It would seem like if 30 feet is the garage width, 14 feet is the breezeway width, not 12.
It's 12.
Well, how come we're working with two different dimensions here, it seems like.
We've gotten the clarification, though.
Which is which?
12 is the width.
It is 12 wide.
12 and then the 30 to get to 42.
And how wide
total.
is the garage?
30.
Okay, you got the numbers twisted here, so that's why I'm so confused. Okay.
Oh, no, it's not. Nothing, Mr. Burgess.
Well,
Nothing but hours of therapy.
if one's 30 by 34 and the other one's 14 by 12,
That'd be nice.
So in this,
reasonable size summation is it's 30 by 14.
Sure.
30 and 14, right?
so in this hypothetical, Mr. Perkins, would we be discussing a 14 by 8 or an 8 by 14 for the breezeway rather than the 12 by 14?
Well, Mr. Farron has indicated he could live with that and keep the garage at its width, and this is hypothetical because we're not into deliberation, but once we go there, we tend not to come back.
Right, that's where we got to
And,
talk about it first, right?
I guess
The majority of the board can certainly
You can pull the numbers down.
vote to keep the application as presented.
I guess the question where I was leading with that is there any concern over the length of it with the 14, or are we good just discussing the width? I don't want that to come up as a
Yeah, no,
confusion after.
I think I'm fine with the width only. That's a pretty sizable screen porch, the depth of it is what it is. And to me, it still creates the serviceability as Mr. Farron has indicated.
8 by 12.
So I guess the only question is, before we go into deliberation, Mr. Farron has indicated he could live with this if the board amended it down. And so before we get into deliberation, is there anyone else that would has opposition to altering this, or is that a favorable approach that the board would like, or is it something the board isn't necessarily looking at?
Yeah, 38 is better than 46 or 40, 30, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
If
I'm trying to get at it.
Trying to think of how we get there, how we make this amendment. Mr. Mackey, you can chime in, or anyone else for that matter. Mr. Ver, how would you feel on this? How do you feel about it as it's presented versus if we were to amend it?
I'm not so sure
Maybe-
we should mess with it. I'm not entirely certain that we should mess with it.
Okay. Mr. Corbett?
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with either. I think that seeing what the potential concern is and already seeing that there's a solution to that, to kind of save future variance hearings, I'm okay with making the change if the applicant is.
Okay. And Mr. Burgess?
I'd like to see the change.
Okay. Mrs. Moran?
I'm okay with the change if they are.
Okay. And this is just presumptive, I think. Is it adding up for you, Mr. Farron, if the board chooses?
It is, yeah.
All right.
I have a further question.
Mr. Tripp?
If the maximum size of the ADU is going to be 800 square feet, what size is the ceiling in a
1,020.
what?
1,020.
So how do you anticipate doing the maximum size of the ADU in the proposed garage?
I'm not certain that, that the square footage was known before then. I do know that the footprint of the garage is not going to be the total square footage of the room above due to knee walls and height restrictions and such. So I would say that if we end up going down that road in the future, we would make sure that it fit the regulations.
The plans presented did call it out as, I believe, 736 square feet.
Oh, well, like Mr. Perkins, I could not see those.
That's why you guys got the young eyes on the board.
All right, so it's not an issue. It's only 736.
Sounds like it fits, yeah.
No,
It was an accident.
Yeah, and
it's a
to that
happy
point-
accident.
Well, you take away the
And
stairs.
to that point, Mr. Tripp, it's not really specifically relevant to this, but understanding that where I was going with the size of the width of the
Yeah.
structure and knowing what the future considerations were,
Yeah.
it was kind of where I was going to, along with Mr. Burgess, about the width of it encroaching on that setback.
Well, I was just trying to be nice to let him know that if the maximum size of an ADU is 800 feet, 800 square feet, and you build the garage before you ask for the ADU variance, and it's too big, then you're going to have to modify it. So,
Your considerations were across the board. All set?
I'm all set.
Very good, thank you. All right, with that being said, let's take a motion to go into deliberation.
Chair, I'll make a motion to go into deliberative.
Mr. Corbett makes the motion.
I'll make a second.
Mr. Burgess has a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so let's get down to this. Mr. Ver has implied that he doesn't want to see or feel it's necessary to amend this at all. Mr. Farren is agreeable to it if the board sees fit. And Mr. Ver, care to speak to that?
No, I'll go along with what the other members of the board agree to.
Okay. All right. Mr. Burgess, you care to say anything on this?
Well, yeah, I would like to see something cut back so we at least have a moderate amount of space to get down to the back of the building possibly. So if we want to cut that breezeway down to 8 feet width, then that works for me.
Very good. Mr. Corbett?
I was okay with it either way, mainly because of the way the property lies, that regardless, the trees are somewhat in the way. So to me, the 4 feet doesn't make a huge difference. However, I can see where the board's concerns with that were. So I do think, being that the applicant is okay with it, that shaving off 4 feet to make it less of a variance works, and I'm in favor of it. That, yeah.
Yeah, and my point about not changing his application was that the abutting property, you're looking at the side of their garage. So there's really not very much difference between, another 5 feet or less. I mean, it's 2.5 feet from either property line.
2.5 feet?
Well, I mean, it's 5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you have cover there, you have a tree line there, and just keeping those the distances is more consistent. Certainly the board has granted relief, but the circumstances between the two dwellings and the garage are different from one parcel to the other. So
Yeah.
it changes that hardship argument, in my view. So, Mrs. Moran, you already,
Yeah, I look at it both ways, like what is 4 feet, either to take away from one side or from the breezeway. I think ultimately it could be beneficial, but
okay.
it's only 4 feet.
And are we going to amend this specifically to the breezeway, or do we just amend it that we are specific to 9 feet from the boundary on the proposed construction?
So we give them a little more leeway when they get out there, kind of judge between the garage and the breezeway doing it like that. I think that's a better idea, so that we're not completely shoehorning them in, that maybe they decide, we can take 4 feet off somewhere else.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay, very good.
I agree as well, because if he goes home and gets told that it's not coming off the breezeway, then they would have to start over, and that's ultimately not what we want.
So,
Go for a minimum of 9 feet?
well, so other than subject to the town, state, and permits and inspections, our second condition to this would be that the structure be no closer than 9 feet to the side setback. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, 9 feet to the closest setback, because it
To the
goes
side
kind of...
setback.
Side property
It
line.
goes like an angle. One was 48, one was 47. Does it matter or no?
Well, 9 is the closest it can be to the boundary, so wherever that is, it starts at the closest point, but then it flares out from there. I don't think the applicant's going to build a flared wall. So I think that no closer than 9 feet to the side setback. Okay?
I have teenagers, like they'll find a way.
Okay. If there's no other conditions, we can come out of deliberation.
Make the motion to come out of deliberative session.
Very good. Mr. Burgess made the motion.
Second.
Mr. Burr has a second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 23-106, David and Emily Ferrin, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-48.b.4 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of an addition, garage, and breezeway less than 15 feet from the side property line at 10 Elwood Road, parcel ID 14029-021, zoned LDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have two. The first is subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and the second is subject be no closer than 9 feet to the side setback. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second it.
Mr. Burgess seconds it. Any last considerations or changes? That motion, and seeing no gestures there, let me read findings of the fact for case number 23-106. The parcel is zoned in low-density residential. The applicant wishes to add a garage. The acreage is 1 acre and 125 feet of frontage currently, where 3 acres and 200 feet of frontage are required. The relief is for side setbacks of 15, where 15 feet are required, and the board has presented relief of 9 feet from the boundary minimum.
Where 15 is required, correct.
Where 15 is required. Okay?
I think you gave yourself space just to write in the 9. I don't know if you need to make a full amendment.
Yes, I did, as a matter of fact. Thank you. The relief is, yes, very good, Mr. Corbett. Thank you. Any changes or amendments to the findings of fact? Seeing no gestures there, all in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Corbett, what say you?
I vote yes.
Mr. Burr?
Yes.
Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Mrs. Moran?
Chair, I vote yes as well.
And the chair will make it unanimous by a vote of 5-0. So, Ms. Farren, congratulations on partially getting what you wanted, but I think you've been accommodated, and but anybody who feels aggrieved by this has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. After that, recourse is to Superior Court. Okay?
Very well.
Very good. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda are the approval of minutes from January 19th. Has everybody all set on those minutes? Shall we table?
I'd vote table. I didn't get a chance to
Yeah, very
review.
good. Mr. Corbett, want to make a formal,
I'd like to formally request to table the approval of minutes till the next meeting.
very good. Motion by Mr. Corbett, second, please.
I'll second. No, you got it.
Mr. Burgess, very good, has a second. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We have our usual semi-monthly Town and Country magazine presented, sent out, if anybody would like a copy of it.
Anything good happening?
Nothing good. No.
You're going to have to rock, paper, scissors it.
Other than that, we have how many cases for the next meeting?
We have the one that's coming back, and then we do have one other case on another property that the board's seen before, but different proposal.
Very good. Okay, so we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks. If there's no other business before us, Mr. Tripp, you want to help us find the door?
I'll get you later.
Sure.
You got to make it closer to the microphone. There you go.
I move we go out the door.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
That is good for adjournment. Very good.
I've done that
Thank you. Mr. Corbett has a second on that, and all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.